This is a transmission from a Boston Scientific Mini ICD. This is a combined follow-up report. We can see that the report was created on January 3rd of 2021. The last office interrogation was July 14th of 2020. So we can take a look here. There are no alerts to display, and then we are showing events since last reset. So since those diagnostics were cleared, we show a VT1 at 141 beats per minute, no therapies delivered, and then we see an atrial tach. Not much information there, so we will continue to look on. But given that there were no events to display, it makes me think this was already noted, and it's just including it because it's in the logbook. We can look here for our battery. So we know this was implanted September 9th of 2015. So our approximate time to explant is 2 years. It gives us our charge time of 12.2 seconds and the last capacitor reform check August 16th. And one thing I wanted to point out is this battery graph or battery gauge has thrown me off before. I think it's because it says 1 year remaining here. Looking at a bunch of different devices, this is the only one that I've seen that actually shows this. It'll say 1 year remaining, and I thought it was nearing ERI because of 1 year. But when you look at the actual gauge here, it definitely is more than that. It's saying like once it hits this time that there's 1 year remaining. So just pointing that out there. The leads, this is giving us our atrial, ventricular, and shock information. So here are the numbers from the implant. These are the numbers from the most recent in-office measurement. And these are the most recent daily measurements. So all look relatively stable. You can see we did not get a daily threshold management number here or measurement here, nor did we get one for the ventricle, but everything looks like it's been relatively stable. So it just hasn't run this on this particular day. We can look at our settings. So it looks like our VF zone is set at 205 beats per minute. Our VT zone is at 170, and then we have a VT monitor zone at 135. So I say monitor zone because if you look over here, it says monitor only. So that just means it's going to be recording rhythms that fall within that rate. If we look at our VT1 zone here, it doesn't look like there are any ATPs on. It looks like it's just shocks that are maxed out. And then same with the VF zone. Sometimes you can do ATP while charging, but I don't see that that is programmed on. It looks like our shocks are just maxed out. So these are our Brady outputs here, as well as our lead configurations of bipolar. Rate adaptive pacing is on, so that means that that sensor is on. We can see that with that R there. If we look at our mode switch rate, it's going to be at 150 beats per minute, and our mode switch mode is going to change from DDDR to VDIR. So just something to look at there. I don't know if that's nominal for this device, but I know that these are independently programmable. And we can see our lower rate limit is 60, and our max track and max sensor are 120 and 120. This is the heart failure management report, part of this transmission. We can see that there is a graph showing about 6 months worth of data, and this is just giving us our respiratory rate, our activity level, ATF burden, and then mean heart rate. And we can see everything looks pretty stable. And again, it's telling us that our battery is okay, and it looks like we have about 2 years remaining. This is a 1 month trend data, just basically the data points where you can compare from this December 5th, 2020 through January 3rd of 2021. And it's basically the data points breaking down those same measurements and how they're generating the graphs that the other displays show. This slide shows our trend graphs. So again, respiratory rate, activity level, ATAF burden, heart rate, comparing the maximum, the mean, and the minimum. Our atrial intrinsic amplitude, so our P wave measurements, our pacing impedance, and then our ventricular sensing amplitude. this just continues on from that previous page. So we can see our ventricular impedance as well as our shock impedance. And I'm not quite sure why it's not giving us a measurement here, but I'm not, it's most likely just when the report was pulled, but everything does look stable. So I'm not alarmed by this. And then if we take a look here, these are our ventricular tachy counters. So we can see device totals, and we can also see since the last reset, which was at July 14th of 2020. So it looks like total episodes for this device were 42 lifetime. And then in the last, whatever this is, 6 months, there was 1. And then any sort of treated episodes, there was 1 lifetime in the VF zone. So when I see that, I kind of wonder if they did DFT testing at implant. It's very possible they did or did not, but either way, sometimes I just will look at the implant date, and if there is a shock history, you can see that that was the date of the implant and they just tested the device. So if we look at non-treated, no therapies were programmed, so that was this most recent episode. And again, it looks like we've had a history of some of these non-sustains that did not need treatment. And then you can take a look at some of these other untreated episodes and ATP, any sort of ATPs that were delivered. And then this is giving a % of the shocks that were successful. So of the 1 shock that was delivered in the lifetime, it was 100% successful. This slide shows our Brady counters. So the data is displayed a little bit differently here. So we can see that this period is December 3rd of 2019 through July 14th of 2020. And then this is 173 days worth of data, July 14th through January 3rd. We can see our atrial pacing percentage is pretty consistent. We are looking at intrinsic promotion, so that AV search, we don't want to pace the ventricle if we don't need to, and that's saying that that was 100% successful. And we can see that we are not V-pacing, so that makes sense. We can look at atrial arrhythmias. It looks like this patient does not have a history. It's less than 1%. An episode duration, nothing there. And total PACs, it's giving a count there, which is nice. Not all devices do that. And then this is also giving us ventricular counters for PVCs, which is really nice. So it gives a PAC counter and a PVC counter. And this is our MRI protected on mode. It looks like this device has not been subject to an MRI. This is the slide for the rate histograms, and these look absolutely beautiful. They are nice, and that nice slope that we want to see. Again, just representing the data in different ways, but it looks pretty nice. This is what we strive to get when we're dealing with rate response and any sort of rate distribution. These are the histogram rate count. So again, these are the data points used to create those graphs that were on the previous page. This is the presenting rhythm freeze, or the EGM that was captured at the time that the report came in. So we can see nice normal sinus rhythm. Looks like it slows down a little bit and the patient starts atrial pacing. But EGMs look nice. It looks nice in 1-to-1. Nice conduction here. So nothing that looks out of the ordinary, just with pacing spikes and with the way everything is lining up. This is just the end of that presenting rhythm freeze. Nothing has changed here. This is more battery information. You know, when it was implanted, the last shock, the type of energy that was delivered, the patient notifier is on. So it means that this device will beep when explant is indicated, or ERI, or recommended replacement time. Not all devices have this, so it is always nice to kind of take a look and be able to warn your patients or educate your patients on what their device will do. And especially if there is a patient notifier. I try to do this especially with my ICD patients. In Abbott devices, it will vibrate on our legacy devices, and it can scare a patient if they don't know that it can deliver a notifier. So something to be aware of. If you are doing clinic checks, you can always look in the parameters and the alerts. Is usually pretty easy to find, and you can actually demonstrate it for the patient. Again, not every device has it. Some of the newer ones that it had been taken out of, it's put back in, and now some of them that vibrated will now make a noise. Some don't have anything at all, so it's very device specific. So just additional information on the battery and the longevity calculations and what it's based on. This is our arrhythmia logbook, so we can see the VT episode or the VT1 with no therapy. So it's telling us that it was 12 seconds, so we will take a look at that. And then an ATAC and the average rate here, which does not look very fast at all. And it looks like this one was only 4 seconds, and I don't believe there's an EGM for this one, but it is on the arrhythmia logbook. So a lot of times these won't pop up on that initial programming screen, and you kind of have to dig through the diagnostics, but it's there, so we included it. This is how the non-sustained VT event started. It's always nice to be able to see how it starts. It's going to give us here our average atrial rate, our average ventricular rate, and the detection, which was the rhythm ID that is calling this VT1. And just remember, this is a monitor zone only, so no therapies, even if this was sustained, unless there was some sort of VT timeout, something like that, a very specific algorithm programmed, it will not give therapy for this. So this is the next page of it. If you had noticed, the morphology on the shock EGM does look quite different. Definitely looks like there are more V's than A's, and the V's are very much more regular than the A's are. So V greater than A is a high ventricular rate event, and this is part of the discrimination as what the device looks at to see if it's going to give therapy or not, or if it's binning. But again, this is non-sustained. Looks like it terminated on its own. We can see it terminated here, and it was followed by an ascents, and then back to paced rhythm. And this is just the scatter plot representation for that event. So if I were to write a report on this, I would just note that it was a combined report for a Boston Scientific mini ICD, give the date of implant of September 9th of 2015. The approximate time to explant is 2 years. There were no alerts to display. There was one episode recorded in the VT1 zone. It was non-sustained at 141 beats per minute. No therapies were delivered. And there was one ATR event noted, no EGM included, and the episode log notes it as a 4-second duration. Atrial pacing is 21% and ventricular pacing is 0%.